Hello, I am Deb Coviello, the Drop-In CEO, and I am grateful as always that you've dropped in on the podcast for another amazing conversation where week after week I get these amazing guests on the show and we talk about leadership, we talk about their journey, but all of it is done in the spirit of providing you insights and inspiration so that you can navigate your opportunities and challenges with confidence. And this week I am so honored to have on the show Marianna Kinnee. She is the founder of Might in Motion. She mentors corporate America managers who need help navigating, oh, I see a theme here, navigating the perils of leadership and team building, and has spent over 2 decades as a leader at a Fortune 50 company. And her passion is helping others build legacies. And by the way, she does host the Might in Motion podcast and recently published her first book, Might in Motion: Motivation, Momentum, Mindfulness, and Might. Marianna, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Deb. You did a great job with all the M's.
We were talking before the show. I hope I don't garble this up. I have been on only 4 hours sleep, but Marianne and I really vibe off of each other. We've had several conversations. She was gracious to have me also on her podcast. But a quick shout out to the network. We were introduced by Hirsch Reffin, who just said, you guys got to vibe off of each other. There's something very similar. And honestly, everybody, when it comes to the people we serve, sincerely care about whether you're a senior leader or somebody moving up in the ranks, but we're really focusing on those senior leaders that are trying to leave their legacy. There are insights and things that maybe you don't realize, and through these conversations, we impart some of that on you. And hopefully you can leave a lasting impact. But Marianne, I want to give you the stage first and just say a little bit, share a bit about yourself, your journey, and how did you ride at this Might in Motion work?
Hey, great question. Thanks again for having me as a guest. I've been looking forward to this.
Mm-hmm.
And so my journey started a long time ago in college, where I had the opportunity to take a job with a trucking company. That was one of the most fun calls to make to my father to tell them I had this really awesome opportunity to go to Oklahoma and ride around with truck drivers all day. And my dad, being, a strong Italian man, was like, "You're doing what?" My daughter was going to be going, "Where?" But what it did was it really showed me uh, the life of a truck driver, a day freight driver. So I wasn't overnight, doing time studies with them, seeing their routes, how they interacted with customers and job sites. And it ignited a passion within me about supply chain, which isn't always a path that women follow. And through that, through my career, I had the opportunity to work at KSA, which was a consulting firm where I got to go and work at multiple warehouses, clothing warehouses, e-distribution warehouses for toys, just like really cool, different things to see how the process worked and to see how product moves through these big behemoth of buildings. And at the end of the day, get to a customer, either at the back end of a store or at your front doorstep. And I continued that through my career at Fortune 50 company. It's going to have an orange apron, so y'all can all connect the dots. And I spent 22 years there. And that's a really long career, I think, to have anywhere, which made me a little bit of a unicorn because my experience there spanned from store operations and how systems interacted with associates, all the way to inventory planning, to how do we figure out the best route to get product through our supply chain, to international freight, moving product to really cool places like Alaska, Hawaii, and Guam. And then finally, middle mile, which is moving stuff from one location to another location. And then recently, this past summer, I made a very big transition of leaving this kind of corporate space, Fortune 50, and now I'm part of a tech startup, which is really, really cool, taking all of that experience and now leveraging it in a completely different way. Along that path, you mentioned Might in Motion, I started my own company. And my intent with Might in Motion was, how do I help more people in the corporate space learn and grow as leaders? Because that was something that I always sought out, right? And sometimes you have to go outside of your four walls and listen. So I started a podcast and tune in to hear a different voice about how to be a better leader. And then I turned that into a book, which is a very, very like, you know, uh, a simple read, because sometimes you just want to be challenged on one facet and you want to be able to open to that, read a few pages, get a challenge, and then go execute that over the next few weeks. And then do that on wash, rinse, repeat. So it's been really, really cool to have this very long corporate journey, this new, fresh tech startup journey, and bridging that with a passion of helping others grow and learn as leaders.
Oh, I mean, you're singing to my heart here. Thank you for that. I mean, there's so many directions I want to go in here because, but before I kind of go into some more details about, your transition to a tech startup and starting your own business, I always like to go to the origin. So you found it fascinating to learn and be inserted into the supply chain process, understand the inner workings, and being a problem solver. But I find sometimes people go into corporate and they will follow a path because that's their education, that's their training, and that's where they just were, and they get really good at it. But is there something
Mhm.
about you as a person or as a child or a teenager, who knows, that fed into this passion? Because there's got to be something in you, Mariana, that feeds this and this feeds your soul. I'm just
Mhm.
curious, tell us more about you.
Yeah, I mean, I was always hyper organized. I was the kid that would lay out my room in such a way that I can get up and just make one path of getting dressed. Right? My mom tells this story when I went off to college and they were going to come and visit. And I called her and I said, Ma, I need you to go to this dresser. It's the third drawer down, the middle pile of shirts, and I need the fourth shirt. Like that's how like so I'm sure there's some level of OCD, like there's probably something I was never diagnosed with, right? ADHD, something, who knows? But I always loved process. I was the friend that begged to go over to your house and help you clean your closet. Like, because I wanted to go through everything and then put it back in like a cool, fresh order. Right. And ended up being able to take that and make a career out of it in a very different way. Right. So everything that you touch in a supply chain standpoint is about order, right? You want your warehouse to move efficiently. You don't want to have to go back and forth to pick the widgets, right? As a truck driver, you get paid on the miles that you run. You don't want to be sitting there waiting because somebody can't figure
Yeah.
out where the paperwork is, right? And so all of that just kind of feeds that inner passion of, ooh, I get to put things in order. I get to color code. I get to build something that creates simplicity for somebody else.
So
So that's kind of the common thread, I guess.
no, 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 no. It's very cool here. So then, wherever you have a person that's super organized, who is that other person in your life that you drive crazy because you're super organized?
I thankfully married a Marine who is also just as organized as I am.
Okay, so
So
a
we,
safe
we
decision.
complement each other. Yeah, we're both pretty, like we like our processes. So I probably growing up annoyed my brother the most, because he was the opposite. He was more of like, I know where everything is, and I'm like, how can you know? It's a mess. So he was probably my nemesis growing up as far as annoyance.
So I had to mature a little bit because being also a process improvement person, 5S, order, ease, inefficiency, and then I go, maybe I audit somebody who's at their desk. They're a good subject matter expert, but they got files and post-it notes all over the place, and it's blowing up my brain. But on the other hand, I have to realize there's a different way of working because that's their filing system, to be able to have that palette of information immediately retrievable, just like an electronic system, and you go into the database. That is their database. So it takes all kinds to run the world, but staying with a little bit with supply chain, this is where leaderships come in. We've had a lot of crises, and then it causes chaos and firefighting and burns people out. What, being in supply chain
Mm.
and recent events that have been world crises, for you as a leader, what kind of skills did you have to pull forward in order to deal with all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one thing I talk about with my teams is getting teams to go from chaos to community. So, and that's on repeat. Some leaders think, oh, if I just get everybody to play along, we'll always stay there. And that's a lie because something will happen, right? Unprecedented times. International shipping industry implodes and every single vessel is off the coast of LA. Somebody on your team gets sick. Somebody gets promoted, right? And all of a sudden chaos is still there. It may feel different, but there's still that chaos. And so you have to get your team to community as quickly as possible. Because when you're in community, I don't really like family, because everybody has something dysfunctional about their family. But if you live in a community that you love, you want to help your neighbor. You're willing to roll up their garbage can, or you're going to mow your lawn because it helps the whole community. So I love that concept of how do you create that environment? And your next question is, how do you do that? Right? Part of that is getting to know your team more than just what they do at work, but like what motivates them. Because what motivates one person might be, family. And what motivates the other person might be recognition. And somebody else might be, hey, they just want to be seen as the expert. They don't even need anything public. They just want to know that they're the guy that when somebody starts, they're the ones that do the training because they know so much. And that takes time of being willing to listen and learn and be vulnerable, right? And so that's something that I always try to work with new leaders on is to say, you may have gotten promoted because you are this amazing individual contributor, but now you're leading a team and everybody's going to work maybe differently than you. But if you can lay out what the mission is and you put some good guardrails in place, that's going to allow your team to get to the mission maybe in a slightly different way than you would have, but you can help steer them there, and along the way create a space where they actually really enjoy working for you and they become your ride or die people, which is because think about it, at the dinner table, who are you talking about? You're talking about who you work with,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
you want that to be a positive conversation for the most part versus, oh, Marianna asked me to do this again, right? Like I always wanted to try to create an environment where people realize that we are working as a true team, a true community.
So, as I'm listening to you, the things that was really important is that, you know, larger companies have resources. You got learning and
Mhm.
development, you have mentorship programs that help guide new leaders or up and coming leaders, maybe even that senior leader, how best to support your team in order to get the technical result. Technical, you hire good people, they know the job, but they got barriers, they're confused, there's chaos, what's going to happen to me? We can't get supply, etc. It takes an important leader, but what I'm finding is sometimes when you move into these smaller companies, they're so dependent on internal resources, they grew up together, and they don't necessarily ask for help. And what happens is you've got your leadership team, but then as things change, they don't have all these skills, how to deal maybe with certain types of crises. And even that leader doesn't have the time or the ability to train or evolve. And I find they wait too long and then they get into crisis. And it's the work you do that you plug and play. Okay, it doesn't have to always be you, but hey, Marianna can come in for a period of time and coach the team. I'm just wondering, maybe from your perspective, if you've seen leaders wait too long to ask for their help and
Mm.
then kind of lose some of these people. Any thoughts around this?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think everybody can look at metrics like turnover,
Hmm.
and you can usually clearly see, oh, there's a problem,
Hmm.
right? In one, maybe just in one area. And the other thing that I know bigger companies do, which is more of like the voice of the associate, and your 360 reviews and all of that. And what's really cool now being at a much smaller company, right? Where there's like less than 50 people. What's really cool is to see the company I just joined, they're now doing 360s. They're now taking some of those things that you might see at a larger organization because they realize there's an opportunity for everybody to learn from each other and grow. And growth might not just be how do I learn to code, in a certain language, right? But more of how do I better deal with people? and how do I do a better job of lifting everybody up and
Mm.
helping them grow.
And those are the kinds of the companies that I like working for. It's not just the smaller entity, but when there's a leader in place that recognizes that they need to bring in some kind of support, some type of coaching in order to be able to continue to sustainably get those results, especially like in a startup company or early. But I'm going to ask you, I mean, what was it like for you? Again, you had a great career, 20 some odd years in one company, and you took the decision to go into a tech company. What were your thoughts about that? And then now that you're there, a few-ish weeks, what are you seeing, positive, negative about that environment? Because a lot of people stay where they're comfortable and don't
Yeah.
take the risk and move. So, what was it like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very long process of my husband and I really coming together on the decision on, is it time to leave? And I think, if you don't have a partner, then you still have to come up with the pros and cons on making a big move. Now, I will tell you, I think there is so big moves may not mean moving from one large company to a small company. It could mean, you know what, I'm going to go from store operations to inventory. I'm going to go from transportation to merchandising. I'm going to go from quality control to security, whatever, right? Like within larger groups, there are opportunities to move around. The opportunity to go get uncomfortable is so amazing. It gives you a chance to really learn what are you made of, right? It forces you to trust others, which goes back to that building community, right? Because now you are not the expert, but you're bringing your expertise to the table. And how can you help others really learn that connective tissue, right? I had this amazing chat earlier today with a gentleman on LinkedIn who I worked with many, many years ago. I respect him so much. Big merchant, like understands merchandising. And, we were talking about how his opportunity to go learn supply chain helped him actually save millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars of margin. When you're a merchant, that margin results in a really big bonus, right? So like he was like, when I learned that I could partner with other teams, I made more money. The company made more money because I took off blinders, and he wouldn't have been able to take off those blinders if he hadn't taken the risk, right? So for me, moving from a large organization to a smaller company, which was kind of where the question came from, this is a big, I'm getting really uncomfortable and I'm loving it. Like I had forgotten how much I crave being uncomfortable and learning. And I've been loving these past, I think almost 5 weeks now. And I know people will say, oh, you're in the honeymoon stage. Well, maybe I am, but like it's been really cool to see what it happens behind the scenes, get to go to other warehouses. So being able to go to a cold foods facility. I had never been to a cold foods facility, right? And I geek out on that stuff. You, Deb, might be like, I don't really care to know what a reefer truck is, but I'm over here going like, that's cool. It's a reefer truck, and that's the temperature that it's set at, and it's only at this temperature, and here's the fuel level, and the fuel is less than a quarter of a tank. That might be a problem because if the chicken thaws out, nobody wants the chicken, right? Like, so that to me is where I get really excited too, is being able to see so many different supply chains now, and take that and grow and learn. So
I
I
think
I always, when people come to me and I'm mentoring someone and they talk about they feel stuck, my first inclination is to understand, are you afraid to unstick yourself? Like, because it starts with you being willing to go take a risk.
Mm, that is probably one of the greatest sound bites in this show. I'm going to definitely get that short out to you and across YouTube. So powerful. And that's actually where we have to ask ourselves those deeper questions. Are you willing to risk not knowing what is on
Right.
the other side, versus your comfort level of I'll just like endure this, but then you have to think about, well, then what is life? Am I living for work or working for the life I want to pursue? All of that. We sometimes just get so caught up in just doing what we've always known, And we never take a time to reflect, stop, talk to our significant other about let's just look at this. This might be a big scary opportunity, but look at yourself.
Right.
Your energy is so amazing.
I mean, think about when we first met, to your point, energy. My energy with you then was different because of where I was, my mindset and everything. And now I just am like, yeah, I'm in that. And I've done that on repeat in my career, right? Where it might have been moving from like one floor of the large building to another floor to do something very different.
Mm.
But taking that risk has been so gratifying for me. And I didn't do the moves haphazardly. I didn't do moves just to go get a promotion. I did moves strategically. So I knew if I'm working in retail, right, which is the industry I was in, and I wanted a seat at the table, my legs of that seat required me to have exposure to store operations, to merchandising, and to supply chain. And if I had a little bit of experience in all three of those areas, I would have a seat at any table and I could have a conversation with anybody within the org. And so like I laid that out 22 years ago, as a young kid with big dreams, so that every move had a point. There was a reason for it. It wasn't, oh, just to have a move. And sometimes I think people only think it's an upward trajectory. Sometimes it's side to side. There's a lot of zigzags.
I use that word zigzag too. And you bring up a really, really good point. Even if somebody is maybe mid-career and they say, oh, I'm too far along, I can't do that. Well, that negative mindset's going to keep you where you're at. It is
Yep.
possible then, like, well, then where is it that you want to go? Whether it's a seat at the table, you just want to leave your legacy and train others with all your knowledge. It does take a little bit of discipline to sit down and then write
Mhm.
what are those non-negotiables or what are those steps you need to take, what knowledge or experiences you have, and it's all within your control. So again, I talk to you guys out there. I mean, listen to Marianna. She said it. You have to lay out a plan if you want a different outcome for what you're experiencing. So, Might in Motion, you put together this entity, this company, the podcast, the book. I mean, you're a creator just like me. So I'd love to know a little bit, though, about some of the key pillars, because I'm sure they're based on personal
Mhm.
experience about what might be missing. If you could go a little bit into your four pillars and explain the importance and the message that you want to get to my community.
Yes. So I'm going to use the chair analogy again. And I don't know why I always go back to chairs, but it's an image that resonates with me. So for me, when you think of, that path and how you want to grow, it's all down to four things. It's your motivation, your momentum, your mindfulness, and your might. So your motivation is, what's your why? Right? Like, and sometimes you have to play that why game, like, well, why? Why is that important? Well, why again? And you keep asking till you get to what that core is. And so for me, it came down to legacy. I kept on coming back to legacy. That was just this word that resonated with me. And you have to do the same thing for you, right? You got to figure out what is that one thing that really motivates you. Then you can really get into that momentum. So once you really understand your why, then you can start making moves towards that, whatever that may mean, right? So for me, well, legacy, right? Well, now I'm making moves to create the podcast, write the book, which started as I want to leave a legacy of leadership. I can't go and have one-on-ones and mentor everybody, but anybody can go tune in for 30 minutes and learn a nugget. That quickly transitioned into I'm also leaving a legacy for my kids because I realized, oh my God, my kids who are 8 and 10 right now at the time of this recording can listen to their mom and what she sounded like when she was 46, 47. So when I'm dead and gone at some point, because it's all going to happen to us, right? They can tune in when they're 47, 48, 50 and hear what their mom sounded like and hear conversations she had, or their kids can listen. And so it became this different legacy. So it had this multifaceted what was going to drive my momentum. And it's been really cool because now we're 3 seasons in, we're getting ready to record season 4. It's a top 10%. It's like, how did this happen? I don't know. I think it happened because I knew my why, and every step I'm taking follows that why. That keeps the momentum going. Mindfulness is literally like the self-talk, right? So for me, I had gotten to a point where I realized I needed somebody to help guide me because I was stuck. I was stuck in a negative place in all facets of my life. And I ended up seeking an outside mentor group, joined like a big mentor circle. And through that, I met a wonderful woman. Her name is Dr. D, and she became my counselor and helped me with my mindset to say, okay, you're basically screwing yourself because of the way you're self-talking. And it's coming out, and it's coming out in negative ways. It's just like impacts everybody around you, right? And so through working with her for literally 6 months, changed my entire way I showed up, because I can't change how anybody else shows up. I can only take accountability for me. So M was the mindfulness aspect, and I think everybody should have somebody in their life that can help them through that. And then finally is the might, which is your physical, right? I went on a really big health journey. I think when we talked to you, we're talking about a health journey as well.
Yeah.
I lost 50 pounds that I had been carrying around for 20 years, right? And somebody sent me a picture yesterday of like what I look like in college, and I'm like, okay, I'm about the same as I was in college. That's great, because I'd gained so much and I'd held on to it. And being able to understand that how you feel physically is going to impact how you show up, either with your career or with your family, right? So that may mean different things to different people, right? You may love curling. I may like going for a nice walk every day. I want to be able to hike with my kids or ride the bike, right, with them, things like that. You find out what's important to you, lean into it. So those are the 4 pillars, and kind of how I ended up getting to those 4, because they had personal meaning for me. And I figured it would impact other people in a positive way. And then through the past 3 seasons of the podcast, the guests circle around those 4 things. So some people will say, why did you have a death doula on your podcast? You're talking about leadership. Well, guess what? Everybody's going to experience death. And at some point, you're going to have somebody who works for you that is going to be touched very personally. And so hearing from somebody who helps people through that process, why not learn it ahead of time, or maybe get some things ahead of time before you're slammed with it and never had experienced it before as a young leader, right? All the way to, a CNN anchor talking about communication, right? That impacts your career, how you communicate with others, and figuring out this person likes dissertations and emails, and this person is only going to read past 2 lines. Like, being able to help figure out how you communicate with others helps you as a leader. So that's why every episode is sort of circles around one of those 4 pillars. The book dives into each of those with challenges. And then twice a year, I do a virtual event as well, where I bring in speakers typically from the podcast. And it's a great 4-hour tune in, live questions, and we get into the thick of those 4 pillars, which has been really fun.
So amazing. And now I know why you're on the show here, because everything you're talking about is what I've done, what I've thought, what I've felt. And
Right.
by the way, where can I put my application in for that virtual event, or your twice year event? I would love to speak, but anyway, we'll talk about that after the show. You know, let's just talk. I'm just going to share. I mean, everybody knows I've been talking about a health journey. Same. Ate
Yeah.
healthy, I was active and carrying around so much weight. And as of today, I have lost 19.8 pounds towards a goal of 45 to get me at least somewhat close
Yay.
to where I was when I first got married. And
Yeah.
it is pure might and mind and
Mm-hmm.
mindset to finally believe and I am worth, and to commit to this and have community around me supporting
Yes.
me. So again, this is not meant to say, oh, other people should feel bad. It's simply an example of when we set our minds to something and commit to either moving forward or try, just take a few moments like, what is your why? What are you meant to do versus
Yep.
what have you been doing? All of that is one step further in moving yourself forward, might and motion. And again, everything we
Hmm.
talk about, I've been on those journeys. I've had mentors. I actually got a coach right now that is working on my mindset again. Again, I believe I can do everything kind of. I still have doubts. So
Yeah.
I think anybody and everybody could use help, whether it's me, whether it's Mariana, or somebody trusted in your community. You don't know what you don't know. Talking to somebody else or confiding in somebody else may show you your great gifts and also things that are
Yes.
holding you back from achieving those great accomplishments.
Yes. It's so helpful. You think about elite athletes. They have so many coaches. It's not just one coach in their corner. They have multiple, and they're prepping for maybe 15 seconds on a field, right? So all those hundreds and thousands of hours. But us as leaders, we sometimes balk at taking an hour a month, an hour a week to go and actually like talk through and meet with somebody that might be able to help just think about things differently. I don't know why that is, but I will tell you, if you want to be elite in your career, if you want to be elite in your life, find coaches and mentors in different aspects of your life and invest in you. It's amazing when that happens.
And Mariana, this is not going to be the last conversation. It may be the first of many. I mean, you've been a great guest on the Drop In CEO podcast, but I first of all admire you. I resonate with you and what you're doing. And again, we do this work, your podcast mind, to reach those people that are aware that they need a resource. And if it's mine or your podcast, let us be the resource for now, but also reach out to us. But before we bring this to a close, I want to give you the floor one last time to share any last thoughts with our audience.
Yes, so one of the best ways to reach me, mightinmotion.com, has all my contact info, all my socials. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So I'm sure that'll be in the show notes as well. And I love it when people reach out, right? And that could be reaching out and talking about careers. That could be reaching out and talking about supply chain or technology and supply chain. I love those conversations. So please, reach out, be on the lookout, because through the social media, that's where we'll publish our next virtual event, which is called Motion Unleashed. And where you'll also kind of see other upcoming things with the season. Season 4 is going to be really awesome. A lot more leaders across the supply chain aspect, talking more about leadership within supply chain in their own career paths. So really kind of tuning into that group, because so many people, are kind of starting to get into the supply chain with everything that's happened over the past few years.
Mhm.
It's created an interest, which is awesome. So yeah, those are the best ways to reach me. Mariana at mightinmotion.com if you want to just email me directly.
All right. Well, I just want to say I wish you a lot of success. I'm going to continue to watch your journey, but I just want to thank you for dropping in on the podcast. And I just want to wish you well.
Deb, thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.